What we've been doing with the TRaCE project is to gather statistical information about PhD outcomes. Where are the PhDs? What are they doing? So that other people who are in program or considering doing a PhD can have a clear and reliable account of where people go and what they can do. We do something else that nobody else does. We interview PhD grads. And I say we, I don't do it. It's these amazing, wonderful student PhD researchers who do it. We edit and post the interviews. And what we're doing also is creating a mentoring community. The wonderful people, the guests who have joined us today, who will be introducing themselves in a moment, they are part of a growing mentoring community so that people who are doing PhDs now can reach out and ask to speak to people who've done a PhD in their program some time ago and have found their way into very worthwhile and fulfilling career pathways. So it's been absolutely extraordinary. Let me introduce your host for the day. Her name is Sarah Mahabadi. She is a PhD candidate in organizational behavior, and she is president of the Des Hotels Doctoral Student Society. Let me hand it over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you all here today. Special welcome to our guests, Diego, Malvina, and Russell. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and being here today with us. So I thought that it would be nice to start with our guests introducing themselves and telling us a little bit about their current careers. We can start with in any way. I mean, I think Malvina can go first, and then either Diego or Russell, please.
Okay, well, hi, everybody. It's wonderful to be here with you today, albeit virtually. In terms of what I do, I am an independent consultant in health and social services, and I focus on organizational development and systems change. I am also a researcher at HEC, and my work centers around strategic planning and systems change in highly complex and pluralistic settings.
Wonderful, thank you. Who wants to go next? Diego?
Sure. So thank you, Sarah. Thanks for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. So my name is Diego Mastroianni. I have done a PhD in management, information systems, Des Hotels Faculty of Management, finished about 4 years ago. And I've been working for the past 6 years, so there was some overlap in the end, in a company called Moody's Analytics. I'm currently a senior services strategist, so I design different types of service of our services offerings around our software solutions to clients. So we cater mostly to financial institutions that are managing risk, credit risk or liquidity risk or market risk. So all kinds of different risk in the financial industry. Yeah, so I am a little bit of an exception that I left the academic career, the academic path after the PhD. So I'm very happy to reconnect. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Diego. Russell?
Thanks so much, Sarah. Hi, everyone. Very nice to be here. My name's Russell Seidel. I'm an associate professor, and it still feels a little bit strange to say associate because it's fairly recent. So I was just tenured this past March, but I am associate professor of strategy and international business at Suffolk University here in Boston. So I do research primarily in topics around organizational learning and technological innovation, primarily looking at how organizations that are developing new products use different forms of knowledge, both internal and external, to move these projects forward eventually towards commercialization. So that's the kind of core, I guess, research program, I guess, that I've been looking at since the PhD and even beyond. So I graduated from the PhD at Des Hotels in 2013. And I also teach here at Suffolk at various levels. So our undergrad, our MBA program, our executive MBA, and I lead our executive MBA travel seminar to London and Paris, which for obvious reasons is a little bit up in the air in terms of travel these days, but we're hoping to get back there some point in the near future. But very nice to be here. Look forward to speaking with everyone.
Thank you so much, all of you. I have to say, I think we have an amazing selection of PhD graduates here today. Diego is very, very successful, having a wonderful job in industry, and I'm sure he's going to explain more later. Malvina is what I say is the best of both worlds, doing a little bit of academic career and a little bit in industry, and Russell is, as he explained, a very successful associate prof. So I think we can ask them really good questions and get their insight about both of these worlds and learn more about it. So I would like to move to the second topic, which is what motivated you to pursue a PhD? And are you now doing what you thought you would do when you started your PhD?
Same order?
Any order.
Okay, I can start. So for me, the PhD was a personal goal. I had done an undergraduate in business at McGill. I had done an MBA, and I had dreams of completing my PhD with absolutely no intention of becoming an academic. I decided, when I had young children that so I entered much later than many people do, after 15 years in the workforce in business, that this would be a great time to do a PhD while my children were young, because I would have a lot of flexibility. So I chose to do it at that time for that reason. And of course, it ended up being much more difficult than any other job I ever had. But that is, it was purely a personal goal, and I never had any intention of becoming an academic. I really intended to go back and continue what I was doing pre-PhD.
So if we follow the same order, I think I did have the intention of staying in academia, actually. So for me, the main motivation was to change a little bit. So even though I did my PhD in information systems, but it's very different than my previous background, which was more technical engineering. So when I went to work after engineering and went to organizations, I saw that the technical aspect of everything I did was 5% of the difficulty, and the rest was all social. It was all coordination. It was all the how we organize ourselves. And I said, this is madness. I mean, I did all this training, and then I can't really function the way I thought I would in an organization, right? It's not all engineers. Good. I mean, it's a good thing, of course. So so I went to school with that thirst for knowledge, but also with the long-term view of, hey, I really enjoy academic settings. I think I will fit well in research and teaching. I was really, really attracted by the teaching aspect of academia, which maybe we'll go back in a further question. But eventually, I kind of changed, and I learned much more about myself, which is typically the case during a PhD program. And I didn't see that fit anymore. So my aim in the end was more to try to combine the best of both worlds, a bit like Malvina. And I did try teaching for a while. I taught after I graduated, which hasn't happened for a couple of years because of travel. So that it's hard to teach when you're not there, except for this year. Maybe I should go back to teaching.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, maybe just to kind of echo Diego's point about learning about yourself in the program. I mean, for me, that was clearly something that I didn't have any notion of what that would entail, but I think I certainly had a different perspective coming out of the program than I did beforehand. But I'd say for a long time, I had a notion, probably in contrast to Malvina, that I wanted to go into academia and I would get a PhD specifically with that purpose in mind. So I did my undergrad in business and finance and marketing. I started working after that, right out of undergrad at IBM in Toronto in their corporate finance group. And it was a very interesting group, very interesting work, but very high pressure, very go, 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 very kind of linked around putting out fires, if I can say it, kind of on a day-to-day basis, which is just the nature of the job. But after a certain point, I kind of realized, it'd be nicer to take a broader perspective on what organizations are doing. How do I get a sense for what drives these organizations? And of course, as you start to think about that, you get more into the aspect of academic work that PhDs, and especially at business schools, are doing. Certainly shed some light onto that. So I took a little bit of a circuitous route. I came to McGill and did my MBA first, and through that met the faculty member who would become my eventual supervisor, and then transition into the PhD program after that, and had a notion that I'd be looking almost exclusively for academic jobs after the PhD, and was fortunate to find something that was in keeping with my interests. And yeah, I mean, I think that that from the beginning of thinking about a PhD to the end, it was kind of, it changed certainly, but it was always with that end goal in mind of becoming an academic, of being able to do research and teaching in a business school setting. And knock on wood, so far it seems to be working out fairly well. So hopefully that continues.
Thank you so much, Russell. You mentioned something very interesting, which was that you also got your MBA from McGill. So did I, which made me think about my other question, which is, and Malvina mentioned that she got her BCom at McGill. That led me to my next question, which was, why did you choose McGill? Diego, I think your first encounter with McGill was PhD, so maybe you can start this time telling us why you chose McGill, and what do you think about your choice?
It was a great choice. I think it's a slightly longer story, but basically I come from Brazil. So I went to engineering school in Brazil. Then I moved to Europe, and I went to a few countries there, but I did a master's in Italy and a master's in Germany. So I've been kind of sampling universities in other places, and then for more personal reasons. So this was early 20s and really discovering the world. And then I got married, and with my wife we decided to come and start our life here in Canada, in Montreal. So basically we chose the place first, and then it was okay. I applied once I was here, and I looked at the different programs, but eventually I just applied to McGill. I mean, it was really I thought it was a good fit, and I really enjoyed my time there.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And Malvina or Russell, each one of you, if you want to tell us why you decided to come back to McGill.
Sure. Well, I had worked with a professor in my undergraduate. I was a research assistant and teaching assistant for her, and we had kept in touch over the years. And so when I thought about doing a PhD, I knew that I had to do it in Montreal, first of all, because I already had a young family. But I thought of her, and I thought of continuing our work together. The other issue really was that I was coming in with a question, and the question, of course, changed throughout the PhD, but the question I was coming in with had a lot to do with the healthcare system in Quebec. Mm-hmm. And why we were losing at the time a lot of physicians who were leaving the province. Mm-hmm. So I had to be here. I was very curious and interested in one particular question that was Quebec-based. And I was thinking about a professor that I had already worked with, and how wonderful it would be if we could work together in the PhD. And your last question about was it the right choice is an excellent question. And it's actually a complicated question. I would say to you that I didn't do my homework.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we spoke about that during the interview. It was those three things that I just mentioned to you, and I didn't let it go any further. And I probably should have, because I only realized once I started the program how variable it could be. The program could be in so many ways in terms of coursework that you take, the kinds of courses you take, the length of time of the program. There were many things I didn't even think about, and probably should have. At the same time, I will say to you that somebody very wise said to me, and I tell that to other people now, when one gets a PhD from McGill, one really deserves it. So, you work very, very, very hard, but I really feel that that is true.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, so in my case, I think it probably a little bit similar to Diego in the sense that I was attracted to the idea of coming to Montreal in particular. I mean, McGill was certainly a big attraction as part of that, but I'm from Ottawa originally. I was living in Toronto and was kind of looking for a way to come a little bit closer to home. And as part of the MBA, I looked at McGill and a couple of other places, but there was no question that McGill was head and shoulders above the other places that I would go. And then, of course, being able to be in a city as diverse and as cosmopolitan, certainly as Montreal is the icing on the cake. Can be a little bit of a distraction, certainly during a PhD program, but I was happy to be there for the MBA, eventually to meet a lot of really great faculty members who advised and kind of guided me throughout the PhD program. So it was kind of a soft landing in a way from the MBA into the PhD. And I guess to the question, was it the right choice? I mean, for me, I don't want to oversell it, but absolutely, unequivocally, yes, it was. For me personally, it definitely was. I think that despite some of the challenges and struggles and obstacles that we all face in the PhD program, I mean, I can say it in hindsight now because I have the type of career and position that I aspire to have. But in retrospect, I think certainly all the struggles and all the good times that I went through helped to shape my outlook and my view and helped me to make the researcher for what it's worth that I am today. So I think it was definitely worth it. There's a lot to recommend McGill to PhD. In my case, it was absolutely right.
Thank you very much, Russell. Let's move to another question, which can be, I think it is, a little more fun. What was the best, the worst, and the unexpected about pursuing a PhD? Russell, why don't you start this time?
Sure, I can start. So the best, I'd say the best is just the camaraderie that I had during the program. I mean, I know Malvina and Diego, we were at some point, I think, all probably together in the program, at least at one point in time. But more broadly speaking, the cohort of people that I came in with, the people who are more senior to me in the PhD program, it felt really like a very tight-knit group. It felt really like a group that was supporting each other. We all understood what the struggles were like. There was no kind of notion that, I have to get ahead at the expense of someone else. At least I certainly never saw that. There was a lot of really strong support in the cohort of PhD students, which I think was absolutely fantastic. And you hear horror stories from other places where that might not be the case. And it's just, I can't identify with that because that was absolutely not the case for me at McGill. So that was for me the good. The bad, I mean, I don't know if I'd characterize it as bad. It's just characteristic of these programs in general. It's the open-ended nature of it, certainly. I mean, not knowing after you finish your comprehensive exam what your eventual research project's going to look like, and having the exciting and terrifying freedom to basically pursue essentially what you want in a very open-ended fashion. There's a lot that was good about that, but there was a lot of that was challenging. Certainly, trying to keep yourself on task day to day could be difficult, but again, it's the struggle kind of makes us who we are as academics and as consultants, as practitioners, certainly as well. And then the last question was the unexpected, I think. Yes, Sarah. So the unexpected, I think probably the unexpected was just the kind of sheer breadth of opportunities that we would have as PhD graduates afterwards. So again, probably unlike Malvina, I had no notion that with a PhD in business, I could even aspire to maybe even think about doing something in industry. And that was a revelation to me, even though I didn't pursue it. I was like, wow, yeah, the PhDs in business who can actually do work outside of academia. What a concept. So I think that was really something that was interesting. And I hope that people who are continuing in their PhD studies also remain open to that possibility, because it's a real benefit of this type of education, I think. So for me, that was completely unexpected, but a very nice surprise.
Wonderful. Thank you. Diego?
Yeah, I'll maybe reorder a little bit. So I'll start with the bad. And for me, I think one thing I struggled a lot, I came from industry, right? So I did some work before I came from industry. So I had colleagues that were kind of doing all the full academic path, and for them was so natural just to be there. And I struggled to reconcile, right? And I tried so many times to have those conversations. And again, I'm so glad that we're having one today. And it was taboo, right? It was a dirty word to say, oh, maybe when I finish, I'll go to industry. And then the first thing is, what the hell are you doing here? Why are you doing a PhD? And so there was no like this focus on saying, yeah, everybody will do an academic job. There's no other path. And for me, that was really bad, because it was not one person, two people. It was very collective. Now, when you had one conversation with a colleague, with professors, so everybody would acknowledge and would say, yeah, no, I mean, I know this person and they did this, and it's fine. But in public, everybody was like, no, I will go and apply to all the best schools and become a professor, and tenure is my ultimate goal in life. So that for me was really bad, to not have a choice, right? And I had to make my choice. And maybe the unexpected was that once I made my choice, I had much more support than I thought I would have, given the lack of conversations before. And then it was like, I mean, I think secretly a lot of people have thought about it, and then they like, oh yeah, tell me more, and they were super interested. So that was unexpected. But I mean, of course, I agree a lot with Russell on the good as well. So the community that you form. I mean, think about it. You do a master's, an MBA. It's a 1 year, 2 years. It's a tight and it's nice, but it's very short. But there we're talking about 6 years. We're talking about a much more reduced group of people and going through the same struggles. And we spend I don't know, 60, 70 hours in the office a week, and with these people. So we see them more than anybody else. So at the end of, I mean, you create bonds, and it's very, you learn so much from those interactions than better than sometimes you read from papers or from other things that you do in the PhD. So that is really priceless.
Thank you. Malvina?
Yes. So, boy, I agree with you, Russell and Diego, about the camaraderie. That was the lifeline, the bonds. I can still remember at the last second, as I was just about to hand in the PhD document, the final thesis. I mean, I have tears in my eyes. They're rolling down my face, and I haven't done the French translation of the summary yet. And, you know, one of my friends came and just said, don't worry about it, give it to me, took it and just wrote it for me. And I mean, this was an incredible thing. And I don't know about you guys, but I keep in touch with that small group to this day. And we thought together, we did critical thinking together. I know that I can still do that with them. Maybe I'll jump to the unexpected. I expected, stupidly perhaps, that the PhD would be a continuation of my education, a sort of natural continuation. I did my undergraduate, I did my master's. Now it was time to continue. It had never been too difficult for me. Now it was time to continue and get that PhD, go to the finish line. And of course, the PhD is unlike anything else. I mean, it is not a continuation. It is starting over. And so that to me was a huge shock. And I guess the second shock was that the business experience, as I'd said, by that point, I had, I think, about 15 years of business experience. basically the message very clearly from the beginning was you can check in and leave that at the door. It's time to start from scratch now. And I wasn't expecting that either. I figured that with my past education, with my business experience, I could bring something to the PhD and I could build on it. But in fact, in both those cases, it was starting over. So that was humbling and extremely surprising for me from the get-go. In addition to the wonderful camaraderie that you both spoke about, Diego and Russell, I would say also one of the best things is the way at the end of the day, my brain completely changed. The way I think, the way I see the world, the confidence I have in finding my voice for so many issues that are not only related to my thesis or my PhD or my area of work, but even to other areas where I now have some confidence while retaining my humility, of course, to say, you know what, let me dig into this a little bit. I'm going to find my voice. And I never had that before. I never tried to have it before. I didn't have the curiosity that was triggered during the PhD process. And in terms of the worst, I would say it took a very long time. In organizational behavior at the time when I was there, the average was about 8 years. And I fell right around that average. And that was a long time to be out of the workforce for somebody, you know, with 3 kids. It was an isolating experience at times, but at the same time, that isolation also teaches you to be an independent researcher, which I think McGill is excellent at doing, at nurturing independent researchers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I have many more questions, but I think why don't we open it to the audience and see if anyone has a question wants to ask, and yeah, we'll keep it from there.
If we don't, we'll pick random names.
I can start first.
Sure.
So thank you, Malvina, Diego, and Russell. It was all very helpful. So thank you for your time and thank you for being here and share your knowledge with us. So I didn't articulate my question in a very good way, so it might kind of look messy, but there's my concern because I'm going to start a PhD program, and the concern that I have is that in my master's, I work with my cohort, and as you also all mentioned, that it's a great bond between the students and it's going very great. They're all very supportive. But my concern is that, like, in a few cases, when the students try to get closer to each other and work on the same project and the money get involved and the project gets long-term, or they want to start a business together, or that they want to initiate a new team together, the problem gets that you lose that supportive relationship because the things get real. So maybe my question is that, do you think that really the PhD relationship or the relationship that you have with your cohort is a conducive relationship for making and establishing a business or starting this sort of initiative or working with your PhD cohorts, or you prefer that relationship to be just as being a friend and not make it more serious because it may cause a trouble and just you lose that supportive network after all? I don't know. What's your input on this? I know it wasn't a good question, but it was just something that I struggled.
No, all questions are good questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I can take a stab. So I think on the PhD, are you doing a PhD already, or?
Yeah, I will start PhD in September.
Okay. So you see that there's a big difference in terms of, I mean, people who have such specific paths in the PhD. So you'll be joining, and probably you're going to be the only person with your supervisor that year. And then even if your supervisor has other students, but they are in already different trajectories, and maybe you have a project. So there is only competition if you look for it and if you want to, but otherwise there is, on the contrary, there is so much breadth of things to do and interests, and the sooner you realize that actually also the success of your neighbor can be your success too, right? So that it's moving the name of the school up, and then the name of the department, and people doing well on conferences. That really, so I'm not saying no, it doesn't exist, or people will not feel jealous, but at the same time, there is so much room for everybody to really flourish. So I would look for that in a program, and eventually, again, there'll be a you'll find that those differences, people in different not verticals, the departments and different schools. So it's hard to overstep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I would maybe just add to that. I know your question, Ehsan, seemed like it was more along the lines of, say, a business or something along those lines. But if I think about research projects, for example, and pursuing research projects with friends of mine from the PhD cohort, I never, and maybe foolishly, never even thought had a second thought about it. Anytime a friend of mine had a project that seemed interesting, and hey, what do you think about working on this project? I was literally always jumping in and saying, yeah, that sounds fantastic. We get along well anyways. Let's see if we can make a go of it. And certainly the personalities will have something to do with how compatible you are professionally. But I think that one of the good things that I experienced, and I think that maybe Diego and Malvina would have probably the same perspective, is that you get deeply enough engaged with your cohort mates and the other people in the program that you trust each other enough to be able to say, yeah, I think your idea is crap, without taking offense at it, and being able to preserve that relationship even if the professional aspect of it doesn't quite advance. So I think that I personally never had a concern about that myself, but that might just be a function of the fact that, in academia, so much of it revolves around publishing, and you're always looking for interesting new projects, and friends of yours who have projects might approach you with those types of things. You might do likewise. So I never really saw an issue with it to the extent that you're describing.
Yeah, but Russell, have you had any friend that they're very good at being a friend, but not being good at being a co-author, because maybe there are too perfectionists and they may just like hold you back from your publications?
Yeah. Sure, that's always a concern too, and that's where again the personalities have to be kind of compatible. You have to have, I guess, a sufficient comfort with that person to be able to realize and to say, look, it seems like this project isn't working for whatever reason, and we need to cut our losses here. We do something different. But yes, I think that that's always a risk, but that's a risk in any new project, I suppose, right? You never really know how it's going to end up until you kind of embark upon it. And that's all part of the learning process too. And I guess I would say too, that I would encourage any PhD student or soon to be PhD graduate not to let that kind of hamper you from making those types of connections, because I think that the more of those connections you make, the stronger your ability to network in that way goes, and the more those links kind of persist over time.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Malvina, is there anything you want to add?
The only thing I was going to add is that having sort of working in both spaces, I do think there's a difference between collaborating on research and collaborating on business. And as Russell said, sort of the same issues apply when we often say be careful when you try going into business with friends or family, right? I mean, those concerns apply no matter what sector you're in. But certainly with research, I have just gained so much from collaboration. At this point, I don't ever write by myself, because I just find I learn so much from writing with other people. There's this mutual learning that takes place between and among the co-authors, and then between the authors and the reviewers. So I think I just think very differently about doing research with my friends and colleagues versus would I always go into business with them? Not necessarily. So I think they're two kind of different things. And with business, I would say, yeah, it's the old adage, think very, very carefully before getting into business with friends or family, because you don't want to lose a friend, right?
Yeah.
But that applies in any sector.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other question? I have a question in the chat. Rania, go ahead. And then Sai.
Hi everyone. First of all, thank you very much. Very interesting conversation. And it's not a question, more of a comment maybe, because two things caught my attention that Malvina and Diego said. So Diego, you were saying that you were talking about the lack of openness as to non-academic careers that you have faced. And Malvina, you talked about oh, I forgot what I was, yeah, the industry experience, that the industry experience, you were under the impression that doing the PhD, you had to put it aside and start from scratch, almost like push the reset button. And what I wanted to say about these two things, that I think we need to acknowledge, all of us, that our experience and our perception of the experience of PhD is highly, highly supervisor dependent. So I think that from my experience so far, because I've worked with two different, I was fortunate to work with two amazing researchers at McGill, and their perspective on these issues is very different one from the other. And I discovered that, and I was a bit, that was my unexpected thing, Sarah, if I might add it to the unexpected, that their perspective of, or the angle under which they see the industry experience was extremely different. And I think I just wanted to point that out, that I think it's not something generalizable as much as it's something maybe that is very supervisor dependent.
Absolutely. No, I think it's, I mean, a lot of your PhD life is also guided through the relationship you have with your supervisor. And if the supervisor is not on board with your plan and they have different views, of course, that will really guide a lot of your life and your perception. But like Sarah and like Russell, and probably like Malvina, I was also the president of the DDSS, and I had those conversations not only with my supervisor, but with different professors and across the 4 different schools as well. And this was, again, it was not the topic people really wanted to talk about. But one day I tried to go against this current, and I organized an event on careers outside of academia. And this was at the Thompson House. And we had 75 people from the 4 schools. And then I said, okay, I'm onto something here. So when we do, so I invited people who did a PhD and were at McKinsey or were in Banque Nationale, were in some organizations. And then 75 people showed up at the Thompson House. Okay, so again, people will be afraid to talk, and professors will not really endorse. Because I think at the end of the day, I understand that too. For a professor, it might look like a failure if your student doesn't stay in academia, if they don't publish with you. It's like, why should I bother investing the time on that student? So I really do understand the professor's point of view from that investment that may be lost. I just don't agree that it should be the only way. I mean, we should maybe find a way that that return on investment goes to the professor some other way, right? In collaboration with the industry, or right, or some other channels.
Thank you. Sai, if you want to go ahead with your question, please.
Thank you. I'm Sai. I'm in my 4th year and I'm doing PhD in information systems. So I especially want to acknowledge that, the camaraderie you mentioned within our colleagues, especially in our cohort, is really important to survive. And I have experienced many times in my 4 years. So my question is directed to Diego. So whenever somebody asks me whether you go to industry or to an academia, I mean, I understand the path that is there for academia, but I was not sure what is there in the industry for us to do. I mean, I heard the terms like consultant and other random words, which doesn't really which nobody really explains, and what path we need to take, and what are the opportunities available for us. And a follow-up question to that is, I understand that in academia, whatever we do, a thesis topic usually follows us around, because those are the first paper for which we'll be known for as a student. But do you think that also, the topic you choose for your thesis also impacts your career in industry if you choose it?
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question, Sai. So starting with the second one. So not as much, right? So people, I say I have a degree in McGill and management, and then when I say information systems, it's already too specific. People don't go that. So very, very rarely somebody will ask what was your thesis topic and what kind of research interests. So that is kind of it's not as relevant, right? In terms of your first question of, okay, what are the options presented to me? That's one thing that there are none. I think when you're doing a PhD, the official path is you do academia and you do research, and if you want to do something outside, it's like basically you're on your own, because there is I'm giving really my own view and my I think this debate is evolving, right? So I went back to the company where I used to work before, and to be very, very honest, I didn't need a PhD to do the job that I do today, or the job that I took 6 years ago. So it was not a requirement. Again, most people don't even know what it is about. Was it a waste of time? Of course not. I think it changed me. I think my work is so much easier. I do so much stuff because when you do the PhD, you become to be super, super productive after procrastinating for so many years. And then you say, oh, the time is up and I need to finish a thesis, and then you become super good. So I really have a different productivity compared to my peers in my job. And I think a lot is because of, and critical thinking too. I think that changed. Before, people would be really drawn to those ideas like, oh yeah, the technology will change this, and I'm always the annoying guy, like saying, why? So give me an example, and I'm reviewing people's papers or ideas before they actually develop them. So which is fine. I think it has its role in the organization, but you have to carve it. You have to find and ask who you are, who you like to be, and then how you fit. But there will be no template, unfortunately. There will be no really clear career. You have to make your own.
We have really amazing questions. Caroline, do you want to go ahead yourself, or should I ask your question?
I can go ahead myself. Yeah, I was hiding there for a little while. I wanted to hear maybe about your experience in the program, in the sense of the fact that it's a joint program with 4 different universities, and you kind of hop across everywhere to try and find the classes that are valuable to you, and as a whole, like dealing with different institutions, different ways of doing things as you navigate through that.
Carolyn, are you already a student?
Yes, I started, and now maybe I'm the only one who's not at McGill in the room, because I didn't know that was a reserved event.
It is not. It is not. You're very, very welcome.
I'm at the UCAM.
At UCAM.
I continued there because I'm working with the same research director that I have that I worked with for my master's.
Okay, and you just started, or?
Yeah, this is my first semester.
Okay, I mean, I can take a shot at that. I actually liked the idea of having 4 different universities involved, greater breadth of choice in terms of courses, meeting different people for a broader group of people. I don't, at this point, it's been a while since I graduated, so I can't speak to details, but I don't recall there being any downside to it, except maybe in the technicalities that vary among the schools. But generally speaking, I was actually quite grateful to have the breadth in terms of students and in terms of courses. And it ended up helping me also down the road in terms of choosing my thesis committee, because I had a broader base of professors too, outside of McGill, for example, who ended up sitting on my committee. And one of the people who sat on my committee, I ended up working with for a postdoc. So I actually think it's a very positive aspect of the program.
Yeah, I think echo that Melvina's point. I mean, I can remember a point where I was in the PhD program where I needed to get some kind of training in econometrics, and there just wasn't a course available at McGill at the time that fit my schedule, but there was something at HEC. And, you know, being able to kind of not have to wait and sit on your hands to get the training that you need because you have access to those 4 universities is obviously a significant advantage. If I'd known that I was going to take an applied econometrics class in French, I might have rethought my choice, but I think I learned it probably better because I was learning it in my second language. But, the key point is that, we have a ton of different resources, and this is really, I don't want to sound like I'm trumpeting the virtues of the program, but I think that one of the things that certainly drew me to the program was the ability to have access to those resources at HSC, at UQAM, at Concordia, in addition to McGill, because I knew that the committee, as Malvina is mentioning, the members potentially of my committee would come from those places. The courses that I'd be looking for would come from those places. I'd meet interesting students from different places. It was just like such a significant enriching advantage for me. So I think that I really can't say enough about the benefit of having access to those 4 universities as part of the program.
Yeah, perfect. We have a question in the chat from Muhammad, whose mic doesn't seem to work. So I'm gonna ask the question. I've done my comps. Yay, congratulations. What do you think about doing internships or part-time jobs at this stage of PhD? And I think this question also came from people who have registered for the session, that what do you think about like basically working at the same time while pursuing the PhD? So Malvina is laughing. You can go first, Malvina.
Well, I'm laughing because at a certain point, when I was there, I really wasn't encouraged to work on a part-time basis. You were meant to be full-time in the program, but I had to work. It was a very long period of time. I had a little bit of funding from the provincial government, but I had to work. And I was also being called back to the work I was doing. I kept getting calls from people who needed this and who needed that. So for me, and I can only speak to my personal experience, for better or for worse, I did work on and off at moments when I could during the program, and it's not always easy to find those. And it was helpful for me because I knew that I was going back into work. I had become more a pracademic, whatever that means, right? So academics is my hobby. I'm a practitioner. They reinforce each other. But having that continuity, or in some cases for people who haven't yet worked, starting to do a little bit of work while you're in the program could be helpful because you establish a network that you then have by the time you graduate, and it might facilitate entry into the workforce. So I certainly, it worked for me.
Perfect, thank you.
So it might be surprising maybe hearing from me, but I would say don't. Unless, of course, you have a need, a financial need, and then you have to juggle those priorities. But the idea of sometimes you fund it, even if it's not making a lot of money, that's not the point. But it's to give you that time and give you that really flexibility for introspection and for going deep. You won't have, either you stay in academia or you go to practice. You have no time like post comps to dive deep into a topic and say, this is my topic and this is what I'm doing. So if there is again, a financial situation that allows you to do it, I would say try it. It might drive you crazy and then you go back. You can always do an internship later or work later, but try that moment. I think I did. Again, I was still struggling with, do I go back? Do I stay in academia? But I did those 2 years after the comps, and it was, I learned so much about myself. It was like, I have no structure in my day at all. I mean, you have what, a meeting with the supervisor once every 2 weeks, or there's, or sometimes you're teaching or doing TA, but the rest is on your, so if you don't do anything for a week, or there's a week that you do a lot of things, it's on you. So it's a really unique moment. I would keep it.
Russell, anything to add, or?
Yeah, I guess I would just probably echo Diego's caution about doing the internship. I mean, I didn't personally do any type of work. I was laser focused to the extent that I could be on the PhD from the time I was admitted to the program until I graduated. I mean, I think that it might not be the ultimate intention of doing an internship, but one of the benefits that I can see in retrospect that might occur through doing something like that is the insight that it gives you into the practical orientation around your topic, right? So if you're doing an internship that just happens to be looking where you can get exposed to issues of organizational culture, and your thesis is also trying to unpack ideas related to the culture, then certainly you'll get some insights from that practical setting that could feed back into your work, and that could make it, richer as a result. But that's a very specific, obviously, a very specific mandate associated with an internship. For me, that would be the only kind of non-financial reason to pursue it, I think, personally.
Yeah, just one thing that I did when I was, again, maybe tired of being 100% in one thing, I did an RA, so research assistant, for related but not necessarily same research project with a different professor with a different team. So that helped me also get a different perspective on how other people do research. And then it fed back a little bit to what I was doing. So a bit to Russell's point, and allowed me to have a little extra money too, that can make a difference during those times. Yeah, Malvina?
Yeah, I need to come back on that one. It's just for a minute. The only caution I then throw to the wind, and I understand both Diego and Russell, but I also know the feeling, and I've seen it in the falling off the cliff phenomenon, where if one's planning not to go into academia or not planning to be in academia, and then one finishes that PhD and it's an important moment, and then where am I going? Where am I going now? What am I going to do? And it can be, we've heard a lot of comments today already. There's not this necessarily preset path for people who are not going into academia. And so I do think it merits at least some consideration and thought. If one knows in advance that one is not going into academia, at least some strategic thinking around what am I going to do in that moment when I actually finish, so that I don't fall off that cliff and wonder where to next.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much. We are getting close to the end of the session, but I always have this question that I love to ask, even in our internal seminars from our guest speakers, that I thought that might be a good question to end the session with. So was it difficult to maintain family PhD balance, or shall I say life PhD balance, when you were students? And have you developed any technique or tactic that you're willing to share with us? In any order, please go ahead.
Maybe I can start by taking a stab at it, if I could. The idea to me, I guess, of family work or work-life balance, to me, it's a misnomer. I'm an N of one, so I'm sure, atypical in this regard, but I went completely into the studies during the PhD. I was and am married, and my long-suffering wife, bless her heart, was very patient with a lot of the fact that I was gone for long stretches of time, that the times that I was around, I was my nose in a book or in articles. I wasn't as balanced with it as, in retrospect, I probably should have been, but I was, again, focused on trying to get through as quickly as I could. But I also saw that, the balance and the discipline that people who had families, who maybe like Malvina had children and had those types of other responsibilities, I think my view is that it seemed to have served them well in terms of being able to really put all these things in perspective. Whereas for me, like every time I got a paper back with brutal comments, it's like, oh my God, it's the end of the world, because I this is like all I'm focusing on. Whereas, someone who had, let's be honest, a better perspective on it, and a more balance in their lives would have said, okay, well, this is unfortunate. Let me put it aside and go play with my children, because that's what really matters. So I had no balance, to be honest. I think now I've gone the other extreme, and it's much more about family, and the academic life is a distant second. But that's just me. I mean, I have no illusions about being able to balance the work, so I'll defer to people who are better at it than I am.
Yeah, Malvina, you want?
Well, I think I have to say I was terrible. It's just terrible, terrible, terrible. I had zero balance. I have an incredible husband, without whom I could not have gotten through this process. And And I wish I could share a technique. In fact, I still need to learn some techniques, I think. What I will say is after the process and after it was done, I really did have a chance to look back and take a breath. And since I graduated from that PhD, I think it actually changed me. And I became much more balanced and much more grounded, just looking back. But I have to say, I'm sorry, I wish I could provide advice and tips, but I was terrible. There was no balance. I worked all the time, 7 days a week, day and night.
Yeah. No, I think it's inevitable in the first 2 years, even a little bit beyond that. I mean, after comps as well. Same thing. I mean, there's no way. There is not enough hours in the week, so you do beginning of the day until the end. You 11 o'clock, you're still reading papers for tomorrow's seminar. I remember several times waking up at 6 a.m. on a Sunday. It's still dark, and then I would sometimes go to a diner or somewhere to read papers because my wife was still sleeping. So again, no secret there. Was also very bad. What I tried to do halfway through the program was to block weekends, or at least one day on the weekend, and really saying, and oh, you have to read it, forget it. Like, it's not happening this day, or either you do it before, or you do it like the morning before the seminar, and you have to rush. And actually made a huge difference. So we think we're invincible, and we think we have all this energy, and we don't. We need to, and this year more than anything, we've been learning our limits and where we need to refocus and what kind of breaks we need to take. And that was super important to impose myself at the beginning. Say, hey, no, Sunday I'm not touching anything related to PhD. I'm not checking email. I'm not reading a paper. And that made a huge difference. And then it went from 1 to 2 days, and it was like the entire weekend. And you managed to make it fit, right? So because otherwise you can't make work fit in infinity. But if you say, okay, I'm actually prioritizing this time off, and then the rest will fit, that actually works. So I do this the same with the work today. And sometimes people might think, oh, the lazy guy who did. I don't care. I do as much or sometimes more work during the allotted hours. I don't care if there are comments of, oh, you're not connecting on a Sunday. It's poor planning on your side. It's not my fault. So by the way, that's a good thing about the PhD in industry. I have the authority to say those things, and then people say, oh, the guy has a PhD. So yeah, go do industry.
Thank you very much. So I think it comes down to having a supportive partner, and if you can, and if you're lucky, freeing up 1 day per week for yourself and your loved ones. Rania, I think we probably have like 30 seconds if you have a question.
Well, it can be very quick. Actually, just a very quick question about, would you have made a different career choice, academia versus industry, if you were graduating COVID times, like many are now?
Very good question. Yeah.
Great question. I guess I would quickly say, because I know we don't have much time, I have no regrets about the decision I made, and I would make the same decision today. No COVID or no COVID. I love what I do. I feel blessed that I have the PhD that accompanies me every day in what I do. So I wouldn't change a thing.
I don't know. I think you lose a lot by not being on campus, and that would be. I probably would still make the decision because again, it was not only for the campus experience, but I'm not sure if it would be like the greatest. I feel sorry for those short programs, but a PhD it's fine. If it's 2 years that we're in the situation, you still have another 6 to go, so you're good.
For me, that was true.
But on an MBA or some shorter programs, you don't, and then it's really unfortunate to kind of be in studies during that time. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I probably take Diego's point about being on campus. There's an enriching part of the experience to being on campus, certainly that COVID doesn't necessarily allow for, but in a broader perspective, I think that I'm with Malvine in the sense that I wouldn't have done anything differently either during the PhD or with my ultimate decision to move into academia. I mean, thinking about academia in particular, for the longest time, it seems like even since before I was in the PhD program, there was all this talk about academic positions just aren't there anymore. There's many more candidates being graduated. There's so much more supply versus the demand, and why would you even choose to go into a PhD program given the poor prospects? I feel that that type of narrative has been in place. Certainly it's been exacerbated by COVID, but it's been the kind of running narrative for such a long time. And I took the leap regardless, knowing that it was going to be a challenge and there'd be obstacles. And I'm glad I did. And for people who are considering the move into academia, I would say that COVID or not, if that's where your passion lies, you owe it to yourself to pursue that. Of course, then, as you've heard here today, there are also other routes into academia and into industry and consulting as well. So I think you just have to pursue your passion. Life's too short to do things otherwise.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful answers. Once again, thank you so much for good questions, for brilliant answers. We appreciate all of you being here today. Chantal, I'll give it back to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to Sarah. I have nothing to add. That was a fantastic discussion. So if you would like to learn more about TRaCE, including the statistics for how many people actually go into academic positions from Dishotel, you can find all of that on our website at tracemcgill.com. You can find additional stories, and we have interviews with people who we have not gotten a chance to talk to on a panel yet too, and more coming in the next year. So to get all of this stuff, the best idea is to sign up to our newsletter, which you can also find on our website. Our newsletter will keep you informed with future events, new stories, and new statistical discoveries. And so with that, I will say thank you to everybody who came and added to our discussion. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you to Sarah. And have a great evening.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Bye.